Good morning, everybody. And again, I do say good morning because for me, it is first thing in the morning. I have been addicted to TED Talks lately, and they've all been telling me to get up earlier, which is advice I didn't want to hear, but it's advice I keep hearing. So, this is my match against Personman, and if we come back and look at the board again, we can see that it has Salt the Earth. So this is something that I look at first because it is going to sort of dictate the pacing of the game in a way. It affects a lot of end game dynamics, whether or not it ever gets bought. And you'll see that play out on this board. You'll also see that the trashing is okay. It's not great. We've got Exorcist, which is pretty good deck control. We've got Apprentice, which can do the job as well. Nothing really likes to trash Copper here, but we have Expand too. So moving on, I am thinking that, of course, the grand markets are going to be quite important, and that split is going to do a lot to determine the outcome of the game. Expedition is going to be pretty good to tactically buy it, just to make sure that you get to trash a certain card or hit a certain price point. And let's speed this along here. And so, looks like starting turn 1, I go ahead and take an Exorcist. And what does Personman do? So what are my priorities right now? What exactly am I trying to set up? Well, putting an Expand in my deck would be nice, so getting myself to the point where I can hit 7 is something that I would like to do sooner rather than later. But that also kind of just serves the end of getting grand markets. So the priorities are generally to put money into my deck so that I can hit 7, and also thin the copper and put payload into my deck so that I can get grand markets. So I have opened with an Exorcist and a silver, and Personman is opening with a silver, and what does he buy? He buys an Exorcist, as you can see. So we open the same. And I take another silver on turn 3, and I line up my Exorcist with the Overgrown Estate, so that'll get to become a Wisp, which is great. And what is he doing? He buys an Expedition to increase his hand size. Um, it is causing a clean shuffle for him, so if his Exorcist was going to miss the shuffle or something, because of, if he made it so that it was impossible for his Exorcist to miss the shuffle with that, then I think that was a really good call. Obviously, if he trashes his Overgrown Estate with the Exorcist, that won't happen, but that's what I'm assuming he's doing and why. He gets a gold. Yep, that's what happened. Okay, so in his case, trashing the Overgrown Estate is good. Causing the shuffle so that it misses is less good. I don't know. I mean, it's probably a fine trade-off just to get that Overgrown Estate out of your deck, but I might have thinned something else just to get to play the. Although at this point, causing the reshuffle isn't a huge deal. It just makes it so he couldn't draw it this turn. So I guess it really doesn't matter very much. But I've got my Expand. And I take an Apprentice next. Hmm. So that Apprentice probably could have just been another Exorcist, right? That would be fine. I imagine the advantage of the apprentice comes from trashing silver. That's the best I can think of, because exorcist and apprentice, they trash copper the same. And the yeah, I can't really see an advantage that the apprentice right now would have over another exorcist, other than the ability to trash shelters right now and draw a card off of them, as opposed to end of turn and getting a wisp. Well, okay, end of turn getting a wisp isn't actually that great because wisps aren't really part of what you want to do here. I decided to prioritize just getting a grand market in the deck, so that I can have payload that's not coppers and hopefully get more grand markets and start getting them a little faster, which is competing with his strategy. Seems to be putting gold into the deck so he can get grand markets without playing the copper, which is valid as well. I like my approach better because I don't actually necessarily want the golds in the deck, because with the when this deck is all coming together, I don't want to be drawing golds. I want to be drawing platinums and grand markets. But the golds are just fine as well. They're just not as good as these cards. So if whatever gets you to grand market fastest, I think, is what wins you the game here. So he actually trashes a gold and gets a ghost, which is pretty good, especially once he gets those grand markets in the deck. So I trashed the Exorcist. I have trashed all my shelters, so trashing the Exorcist is probably fine. And the Apprentice, I picked up another one at some point, and so I am guessing that trashing silver is going to be in my future with that. And I trash a copper here. Let's see. If I had trashed the silver instead, I could have gotten a grand market. Been down a silver in the deck. It's probably fine. You know, okay, I'm gaining settlers off these coppers. So earlier when I was saying that there's no difference really between the Apprentice and the Exorcist, that's a lie. I think that maybe the Exorcist would have been better, because turning those shelters into extra will-o-wisps will be helping me draw settlers, which kind of turns it into a lab effect, which is maybe a little more value than I'm going to get out of this Apprentice over the course of the game. And you see here, he goes ahead and picks up another grand market, so he's got two, I've got one. And I trashed the settlers. I probably could have trashed the apprentice, and that's fine, but the apprentice is helping me thin the coppers, so. I do see I have a total of $7 in the deck, but more importantly, I have a total of $4 that is not copper in the deck. So at this point, I really want to prioritize getting another Grand Market in my deck so that I can buy a Grand Market without playing my coppers. And I think that the right play here is to expand my Apprentice into a Grand Market. Let's see if that's what I do. Yes, it is what I do. So now, next turn, I do have enough payload to get a Grand Market without playing my coppers. And from there, we can really take off. I think Expedition is pretty good here because of all the extra buys you're going to have from the Grand Market too. And the draw is pretty unreliable, so I take a silver just for a little bit of added payload, and I get an Expedition as well. Was the silver any good? Probably. I mean, I don't think I'm going to have a huge problem drawing the deck. Yeah, treasures are really good cards if you can draw them. Okay. So at this point, what was that last card? That last card is a Grand Market. So maybe I should have apprenticed the silver or something, but it doesn't really matter. I come out in the wash on this turn, trashing a silver to draw a Grand Market, and the difference would be I have a Grand Market top decked for next turn. So yeah, it doesn't really make a huge difference. I take another Exorcist. The idea is going to be mostly trashing my Apprentice because it's kind of lived out its usefulness at this point, getting a Ghost out of it. I mean, the Apprentice is a good card for the deck, don't get me wrong, but Ghost is so much better, and the Exorcist can do the Apprentice's job, which is just thinning the copper. He hit 6 with copper in play. And what, is he just going to buy 2 expeditions here? I believe that that's what I would do if I were him, is just 2 expeditions. Especially with where he is. He's got more stop cards in his deck, but also more money. And potentially more buys. So if he does spend his buys on expedition, he can potentially set up double Grand Market turns. At the very least, set up turns that vastly improve his deck. Let's see what he does here. Right. And speeding this along a little bit. Okay. So he went ahead and gained a Grave Robber and played an Exorcist to gain a Will-O-Wisp. So, that's a fine play as well. The Grave Robber's going to be a good card for the deck. I'm thinking about picking up a Grave Robber myself, actually. I don't remember if I actually end up doing that. I turn a copper into a silver. Turning the copper into a Settlers might have been a little better because the silver, I'm not really drawing my deck yet, so the silver is maybe going to get in the way of Grand Markets and eventually Platinums. Oh, so yeah, this is a thing. I decide that Imp is better than Ghost here. I said earlier I was going to trash my Apprentice and gain a Ghost, but when the decision actually came to it, I thought about it and decided that the draw is pretty tight, and that the Imp is going to help me play a Grand Market every turn, as opposed to playing it, and I get to play the Imp every turn too, as opposed to playing it twice, well, one turn and then not at all the next turn. So I don't know. I like getting the Imp. The Ghost would have kind of, yeah, no, I like getting the Imp just better. Oh, and you see here, I decide to play my Imp before my cantrips for some reason, and I'm not exactly sure what I was thinking with that, but whatever. I get a double Grand Market turn anyway. Yeah, that was pretty bad to just click the wrong card like that. I could have. What else would I have done with my turn? I could have either put another Exorcist in the deck or bought some expands. Oh well, doesn't really matter. Well, it does, but you know, as much as anything matters. Nihilism. He goes ahead and thins out his copper and turns a silver into a Grand Market. Buys the last one, I assume. Sorry if you hear me yawning. Again, it's early for me. And at this point, with the grand markets gone, we have transitioned into a new phase of the game. And we're going to get to the phase here soon where it's time to start greening, but also, it's not crazy that you could get to a point where you can start salting away all the remaining greens. So you really have the decks are high payload enough and have enough buys that you could really start playing around the fact that your opponent could salt away provinces or possibly colonies if there are few enough left on his turn. So I'm thinking about how to play this expand, and you see I won the Grand Market split 6-4, which is going to be actually pretty huge to that because I will consistently have 7 buys, whereas he will only have 5 buys. So that does mean that the Salty Earth sort of game is usually in my favor, and well, in terms of if I can have the payload to do it. And I get a platinum and take an expedition. I'm not sure what that bustling village was about. Maybe a grave robber would have been better. Let's see, if I had taken a grave robber, I could have turned my bustling village. Oh wait, I wouldn't have the bustling village. I could have done what? Turned a grand market at some point into a province and then salted away the rest of them. If that's a thing, I could have also been gaining fivers with the grave robber to do that with, so. Yeah, the grave robber might have been a little better than the bustling village for me. I don't know. If you think Wild Hunt is important, which I don't here, well, the draw lets you hold more stop cards, but being able to getting villages and then getting Wild Hunts, I think, is slower than just using Expedition for your supplementary draw here because the cantrips have the the best payload on this board is cantrips. So being able to hold more stop cards, I don't know, being able to put more platinums in the deck and still consistently draw everything is pretty good, but I am thinking that going for wild hunts and villages is a little slow. In this case, I believe I'm going to take a wild hunt just because I want to have the option of building it up and then getting estate points with it, but I don't know, it's kind of the same as not. Maybe that should have been a grave robber. And I'm overdrawing a little bit here, so that means it is fine for me to start putting more stop cards in the deck. I'm a dollar short from getting 2 platinums. So I believe what I do is get a platinum and salt a province. Now, again, the reason that I do this is remember I have 7 buys. So if I can build up enough payload without him getting a points lead, I can potentially just end the game that way. That's the idea, is that I create a situation where I can end the game at any given point as long as I have the payload to do it. So hopefully what that's doing to him, and I buy an expedition, which if you remember I'm overdrawing, so maybe that was wrong. I should have probably put more payload in the deck. But if he does not start greening and taking a point lead, I do threaten to salt him out of the game. And he's drawing with his wisps. Good for him. That is what wisps are for. And he's got his grand markets in play. and I assume he's giving some thought as to what he wants to play, and maybe he still is his exorcist and what he wants to exercise. Maybe he's thinking about whether or not he wants to draw those two cards. He decides to draw at least one of them. And he expands a gold into a platinum. Having a platinum in the deck is great. Not spending the gold this turn is less great. But it looks like he's getting some nice gain and play off of it. So you see, he's actually probably being a little more efficient than I am, balancing his draw and payload. So at this point, he's got a lot more payload in his deck than I do. So if he can draw it consistently, he's going to be in a really good place. And I'm not sure what this Wild Hunt is doing for me. Probably just shouldn't have bought this. I think maybe even a silver would have been better than it. So I am going to get to do some gain and play tricks myself here. Now, I think that given my opinion of the Wild Hunt, maybe I should just play the Bustling Village, turn the Wild Hunt into gold or something of that nature. A gold or a grave robber, and then draw it. Probably a gold, right? Hopefully I do that. Let's see. I don't remember. So I'm hoping I make the right play here and just get rid of this Wild Hunt that was, in my opinion, a bit of a mistake to buy. Am I seeing if I can end the game? Spoilers, you can't right now. Alright, still thinking. I decide to play some Grand Markets. A bold move. And Bustling Village. Trash the Wild Hunt. Turn it into a gold. Take the gold. No, click on the gold, please. The gold. Yes, there we go. Go me. See, I can do stuff sometimes. Uh, anyway, so if I had been a little more efficient with my play, I feel like I'd have more platinums in the deck by now, and I'd be in a little bit better of a place. Maybe close to ending the game. Now, at this point, I am ready to start. Oh, and at this point, I do think the expand is right because I just added two more stop cards to the deck, and I just overdrew by a little bit. So it's possible that if I get unlucky, I don't draw everything and I have a dud turn if I don't get the expand. And I think that's disaster. So I go ahead and get the expedition. Now, if he doesn't green here, I can, I believe, salt him out of the game. Do I have? Do I have 28? Yeah, I have at least $28 in the deck, and I have 7 buys. So he needs to get some points here. And he plays his grave robber. What's he doing with it? What did he do with his grave robber? He gained a gold onto his draw pile. That's pretty good. At one point, one of us says, "Oh, he expanded the gold into a platinum and then gained it back with the grave robber." So as you can see here, again, the grave robber is something I should have bought a while ago, I think. So what, is he gonna just double colony here? I think that's his play. I think that's what you do in his position. Yep, he gets the double colony and an expand. Yeah, the expand is going to be pretty good for his endgame position because I'm talking about all these salting tricks that make it so that I have control over when the game ends. But if he has expands in his deck, he can be turning them with Grave Robber into a colony, or he can be turning colony into colony and buying two colonies. So he could empty three colonies out of the supply that way, possibly more if he gets more expands. So these are things that I'm going to need to play around, I think. So we both have some good endgame position, I think. It's just which one of us can uh, get the edge. Now, given that double greening, he has left six colonies in the supply. So if I can salt the earth six times with and still not lose on points, I can win that way. Let's see. So, you can see this turn play out. And this part, I take some time to think. And I don't see it yet. And I still don't see it. And you see I'm fast forwarding time and still not seeing it. And I'm still not quite seeing it. And if you see here, I'm counting, and maybe I see it. Maybe I see it. No, it doesn't look like I saw it. Right. So now, it looks like I saw it. There we go. It only took like 15 minutes. Uh, but eventually I think I got the idea. So what I do here is salt the earth 5 times. And oh no, I turn platinum into colony with expand, and then I salt the earth 5 times. Did I still not see it? Yeah. Then I salt the earth 5 times, and then I go ahead and what did I buy? It doesn't matter because the salting the earth wins the game. So that would be the end of it. Again, you see Salt the Earth play around with end game dynamics in a way that, like, even if neither of us had ever bought Salt the Earth, we would have both had to play around it because getting to that point where you can get all those money and buys means that you could end the game if you let your opponent start with a point lead or close to it. You can lose that way. So Grand Market Split was pretty huge. The fact that I went first was pretty good in that respect. I didn't play that efficiently around with my payload and draw, but anyway, thank you for watching.